The mayor of Moscow said there'd been another nighttime drone attack on the capital's business district, the second in 3 days.
This is a significant advancement in Ukraine's missile program, which allows them to strike deep into Russian territory without solely relying on Western-supplied munitions.
At exactly 4:27 a.m., the silence over Moscow shattered. But it wasn't artillery or tanks that broke it first. It was a fleet of drones tearing through the air like ghost shadows. The $1.7 billion city towers, once thought untouchable, suddenly transformed from a symbol of Russian wealth into a vulnerable target. How did Ukraine's unmanned swarms turn Moscow's pride into a liability? And what was the strategy behind attacking Russia's most secure district before dawn? This is where the story becomes far more complicated than a single strike. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Why strike skyscrapers instead of armored units or air bases? On the surface, towers seem like poor choices for precision attacks. They don't roll across battlefields, they don't launch rockets, and they appear more symbolic than strategic. But symbols matter, and in Moscow, symbols are inseparable from infrastructure. The city towers were never just glass and steel. They were erected as a $1.7 billion showcase, a skyline built for global investors to see Russia's wealth reflected in mirrored facades and illuminated spires. Yet behind the gleaming exterior, those towers hid something less visible, but far more critical. Communications hubs and government-linked offices that carried both prestige and practical value. The city towers sit at the heart of an area that isn't supposed to be touchable.
Drone hit the same commercial tower block that was struck on Sunday. You can see here some images of the damage in these pictures to that tower block.
Moscow has layered defenses, some of the most advanced on the planet, including S-400 missile systems designed to track and intercept incoming threats at distances of hundreds of kilometers. Radar lines stretch across every possible flight path. On paper, this creates an envelope of immunity, almost like a dome sealing off the city. For a single drone, the odds against slipping through that net appear grim. For dozens of them, flying low and deliberately scattered, the complication begins to multiply.
Over the Moscow region, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Ukraine hasn't said anything, but I think, as you say, timing is hardly coincidental.
Timing mattered just as much as technology. The drones approached in the final hours of night, when fatigue in monitoring teams is highest. That precise moment, 4:27 in the morning, was chosen for a reason. Operators had rotated through long shifts, and even with machines scanning the skies, the human reaction window was thinner. Launching an assault in that time frame didn't guarantee success, but it created hesitation. A blip on radar could look uncertain, another could seem like noise. And by the time patterns were confirmed, multiple objects were already closing in. The machines themselves weren't state-of-the-art stealth aircraft. They didn't have to be.
The mayor of Moscow said there'd been another nighttime drone attack on the capital's business district, the second in 3 days.
Ukraine deployed UJ-26 drones, kamikaze units built to crash deliberately into selected points. They skimmed close to terrain, to the river, and between buildings, forcing radars downward. More importantly, many were tasked with distraction, not impact. In military terms, they were expendable assets designed to overload the cognitive bandwidth of anti-air gunners and intercept controllers.
What more do we know about these Ukrainian potential drone strikes?
Yeah, good afternoon, Kamali. It's the second attack in 2 weeks.
Every operator who wasted a missile on a decoy became less prepared for what followed. Defense crews fired at empty echoes, the so-called ghosts in the scope, while the real strike component tightened its approach. Waiting outside of the densest firing envelope sat the Flamingo cruise missiles. Unlike drones, these weren't expendable toys. They carried significant payloads and targeted deeper layers of Moscow's shield.
It was also referred to as the FP5 in some contexts, and is a newly developed long-range cruise missile that is produced domestically by Ukraine.
By sequencing the drones as bait, Ukraine forced Russia to activate its defense too early and too often. Ammunition was spent, attention fractured, and gaps opened across the radar grid. Through those gaps, flamingos advanced with greater freedom. Suddenly, the same towers that were meant to inspire confidence became intentional marks on targeting lists. Striking them would prove not just that material damage could be inflicted, but that Moscow's layered shield had seams.
Skyscraper being damaged, and we have this unverified footage of a high-rise floor with shattered glass.
This is a significant advancement in Ukraine's missile program, which allows them to strike deep into Russian territory without solely relying on Western-supplied munitions.
Here's the part that mattered more than cracked windows or charred offices. At first glance, hitting a skyscraper looks like an act of psychological warfare, a headline stunt aimed at shaking civilian morale. And to an extent, it was. But the real vulnerability came from how those towers functioned. Beyond luxury offices and business tenants, the complex contained digital relay nodes, infrastructure supporting both civilian and government communications. Damaging those links meant not just shattering glass, but interrupting data streams flowing through Moscow's nerve system. A tower wasn't just tall, it was central, which made it both attractive and fragile as a target. Skyscrapers do not double as tank battalions. They don't fight offensively. Yet in Moscow's core, they served as conduits of command. Once drones and missiles reached them, the attack exposed more than architectural weakness.
Defense, meanwhile, has said it shot down 144 Ukrainian drones, with 20 alone being eliminated over the Moscow region.
Appeared to be responsible with these drone strikes deep inside either Russian territory or Russian-controlled territory.
It revealed that Russia's air defense could be forced into errors, and that highly public symbols could also conceal highly practical vulnerabilities. If those weaknesses could be exploited in the capital, where defense resources are most concentrated, then the next issue is even more unsettling. What did the strike reveal about the resilience of Russia's command system itself? And how far could those cracks spread beyond the skyline? Striking Moscow's skyline went far beyond shattering glass. It showed that Russia's centralized command system, thought to be insulated, could be rattled from within its most secure zone.
Ukrainian drone strike on the Russian capital overnight. According to Russian state media, defense forces intercepted more than 300 drones.
Hitting structures tied to communication made a move against symbols while prying open weaknesses in function. If towers valued at billions can fall into the crosshairs, it signals something larger, that no command hub anywhere can count on immunity. The shock lies not only in damage, but in what it implies for future wars. So the question is clear. Are icons of power now also their most fragile targets?